like manufacturing all over the country. My old hometown, Columbus, has a tower manufacturer. Is that Katana? Is that the?
Katana Summit.
Katana Summit. But, you know, everywhere you look, Iowa, Clipper has a plant in Iowa. There's blade manufacturing, I think, in Cedar Rapids. But very significant, and this is not being lost on people, you know, seeing the jobs and economic development associated with this maturing industry, in an industry that could be a lot bigger than it is right now. So, where do we go? Well, in the State of the Union speech in 2005, there was a little mention of 20% of our electric energy for wind. Okay, so people picked up on that and said, wow, what would that be? Is that even possible, kind of thing? The Department of Energy put together a team with national organizations, and they pondered this question in a fair amount of detail. Not only do we have the resource, what would it take transmission-wise, but could we grow the industry that fast? Okay, to build enough turbines and get them installed by 2030 to amount to 10% or 20% of our electric supply. So those numbers are kind of interesting. Oops, I'm sorry. If we look, the installed capacity in the U.S. as of January 2008, 16,800 megawatts. If you put the 8,000 megawatts that we installed in 2008 on top of that, that puts us at 25,000 megawatts or 25 gigawatts. Okay, getting to 20% would require 300 gigawatts in the ground. Okay, getting to 20% by 2030 would require us to do probably about 10 gigawatts a year for 15 years. Okay, if you did it kind of on a smooth trajectory. So that scared some people, but in the 20% report, they concluded that there was a way for the industry to evolve, okay, to meet the requirements of that demand to get to 20% by 2030. So if you look at sort of the sorting and the filtering they did, if we had this 300 gigawatts, where would it go based on some criteria? But one of the very important criteria is, you know, where does the wind blow? Where can we get low-cost wind energy? And you see, not surprisingly, the Great Plains states from Texas to the Canadian border pick up a fair share. It's hard to tell from this, but Nebraska, South Dakota, Kansas were in the 5 to 10 gigawatt range, you know, per this scenario. Okay. Texas has more. There's more load in Texas. They've already got a lot of wind in the ground. They've got great resource and could do more. Some states are completely left out in the southeast. Others would be, were it not for some assumption about offshore, being able to tap that resource. My home state in Tennessee, there are some winds on mountaintops. A lot of that land can't be developed, but one of the things that just burns me when I hear it, one of our senators is really concerned about wind turbines despoiling these mountaintop vistas, okay? Except that in this scenario and in looking at wind in Tennessee, really the only developable properties for wind are abandoned mountaintop strip mines. Okay, so, you know, you kind of went full circle there, and I get a little frustrated when I hear people talking about despoiling vistas.
Too late.
That's right.
So they looked at the numbers behind this kind of scenario and you know, found that yes, it would cost a little more, okay, in terms of what we'd have to invest. But that if you dug through the numbers, you could find a lot of benefits from doing this that wouldn't come from the status quo plan, if you will, not doing 20% wind. And so they went through the economic development and tallied all that up. There's a significant savings to electric customers because 20% wind displaces a lot of natural gas that would have been burned, okay, for electricity supply. When you ease the demand for natural gas, you lower the price, okay, and that number turned out to be very, very significant. In the West, you look at how much water you save, okay, not building thermal generation, but using wind instead. Water has always been, but maybe an even bigger issue going forward for the Western states, depending on, you know, how the climate change impacts come down. And then obviously the economic impacts in terms of jobs in the new green industries. So if we look at where we're at as of, well, this is from the end of 2007, so it's a little bit dated, but we do have the 25 gigawatts at the end of 2008. Nebraska and South Dakota are lagging the neighbors. By some, I don't know, 73 might be close to what's spinning today. There's some other, what is the number right now?
It's 153.
153. Okay. Iowa, Minnesota, Texas, and Colorado, as far as Midwestern states, are always down the road. The growing from here on out requires several things to happen. We've got these challenges, these important challenges that we need to overcome just from a technical perspective. The keeper of, I would say the overseer of electric reliability in the United States is the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, or NERC. Okay? Prior to 2005, reliability in the U.S. was voluntary. The utilities belonged to NERC, but they didn't have to. Okay? And there was a system of sort of carrots and sticks set up, okay, to ensure that people did things to maintain the reliability of the overall system. That changed with the Energy Policy Act of 2005. Okay? NERC now has the force of federal law behind it. It's the Electric Reliability Organization for the U.S. And NERC has gotten around to taking a look at wind, variable generation going forward, and trying to understand what we need to do as an industry to guarantee the reliability of the power system going forward with these new types of supply. That first round just concluded last year. They're immediately beginning the second round of things. So those are the things that are going on underneath the scenes that are hard to see, you know, from the public vantage point, that are critical to getting this to happen. Obviously, the overall economics are important. What this slide shows is really the development in the U.S., and you see those little plateaus. The production tax credit has been an important stimulant for the wind industry. And basically, the production tax credit pays about 2 cents per kilowatt hour, okay, for renewable energy produced wind. And it's not necessarily a showstopper in that without the PTC, wind wouldn't make it, okay? But the uncertainty associated with the PTC, when it's been allowed to expire, has just stopped the industry in its tracks in some years, okay? If I'm going to invest $300 million, I need to know whether the PTC is going to be there or not, because it changes my risk profile on the project. And so those kinds of things have stopped and started the industry, and that inconsistent policy has been very difficult for the industry to overcome. So going forward, consistent policy is very, very critical. We have a little bit different view of energy now with the new administration and the new Congress. We'll have to see what that turns into, and whether that is a long-term vision that will get around some of these inconsistencies that have bedeviled the industry. The $40 billion annual market globally, that's kind of interesting. When General Electric bought Enron Wind out of bankruptcy in 2002, the global wind industry was about $8 billion, something like that. That 40 is, I think, end of 2007, so it was a little larger after 2008. GE last year, their wind business did about $10 billion. Okay, so Gary was hosting us at the Lead Center in Nebraska City when GE talked about why they bought into wind, and they said, well, we didn't do it because we're green, and they put the numbers out there about this growing industry that was relevant to what they did, and they said, you show us those kinds of numbers and we're interested, and that's worked out pretty well for them. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things we think about wind energy in terms of the reliability impacts, if you will, and how they may or may not be true. So this is a whole list that some of them I made up, some of them I called from articles and that kind of stuff, and we're gonna take a little fly through this. Now, some of these are based on a kernel of truth, okay? And so we have to look at it very carefully and say, yeah, you're right, but, and then really